Okay, so just quickly, hopefully you tried 5, 6, and 7. This should be 5. So again, I'm multiplying to 7 adds up to -8. They have to both be negative so that they would add to a negative. So the only options are 7 and 1 and -7, -1, which it's -7 times -1. And so we get two binomials, b minus 7, b minus 1. Okay, and you should check it. I didn't show the checking, but you should check it and you get the same thing. This one is in the correct format. It has a y squared, an x squared, and xy. So I need what multiplies to -27 and adds up to -6. Again, -27 doesn't have a lot of factors. -27 and 1, which is -26, and then -9 times 3, which is correct, -6. And so don't forget to put the y in the second term because of the y squared. So it's x minus 9y times the quantity x plus 3y. And then this one is what multiplies to 9 and adds up to -4. And I tried all my options. Again, you could do like 9 times 1 and 3 times 3, but they're just going to give you a +10 and a +6. So there's no other factors that work, and this is considered prime. Okay, so again, make sure you exhaust all your options before you state that. Okay, so now I want to do ones with, okay, I have a trinomial, but it's not right now in my correct form. I have this number in front. And so if that happens, you always want to check for the greatest common factor. So if it's not in the initial form we need to check for the greatest common factor. And if I look, well, okay, 2 is my greatest common factor. It goes into all of my terms. So we put that in front, and then we divide all of these by 2. And we get x squared plus 3x minus 18. Now we want to factor completely, which means that if any part is still able to be factored, you have to keep going. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to leave this 2 here and pretend it's not there. And I'm going to see if this trinomial now that is in my correct form, like x squared plus bx plus c, will factor. So we do the same thing. We find b, which is 3. We find c, which is -18. We make our chart, pretend the 2 is not there. So we need multiplies to c, which is -18, and adds to b, which is 3. Okay. And so then we write our factors. Okay, so -18 times 1, and that gives me a -17. Okay, and one thing to note is, okay, if I make my bigger number negative, because I need a negative times a positive, this number is going to be negative, and that's not what I want. I want a positive. So I should have tried 18 times -1, but still, if I add that, I just get a +17. So that doesn't work. Okay, so we think about 18, we often think, okay, 9 times 2, I want the bigger number to be negative. Okay, and that gives me -7, so that does not work. Okay, so then we're going to keep going and say, okay, usually 18 is 6 times 3, and I want a +3. So I want the bigger number to be positive. Sorry, I wanted the bigger number to be positive. Which equals 7. Again, if you have the wrong signs, it just means that the number is going to be the opposite sign. So if you do that and you have the correct number, it just means switch your signs then. So then I'm going to add 6 plus -3, and I get 3. This one works. So these are my factors. Okay, so now what I do is I just leave that 2 there, and I factor this like I normally would. I put my 2 binomials, I put my x and x, and then I do -6 plus 3, and then that is factored. Okay, so the main thing is you always want to check for a GCF first. And if it's not in our format, then you need to check and see if there's a GCF, because most likely if it's trinomial, then there will be a GCF if it's not in the format that we want. Okay, So we're gonna do number 9. So we're gonna factor completely. We have 3x squared minus 12x minus 135. So we're gonna check GCF. The only possibility is 3. A lot of you might not know if 135 is divisible by 3, so you would probably need to do 135 divided by 3 and see if you get a whole number, which you will. So the GCF is 3. We're going to factor out a 3, and then I'm going to divide all of these by 3. And so I get x squared minus 4x minus, and this is 45. Okay. Then I focus just on the trinomial, and I need to make sure and see if this factors. Okay. So B is -4, C is -45. I figure out what multiplies to C, which is -45, and adds to B, which is -4. Okay. So then I write my factors. So -45, I have a negative number, so it's a negative times a positive. I want the bigger number to be negative, so I want B to be negative, so I want the bigger number to be negative. So I can do -45 times 1, but probably for most of you, that's pretty obvious that that's not going to work because it gives me -44. So the next thing, 45, often we think is 9 times 5. So I can do -9 times 5. And that gives me -4. And so this works. That's what I want, -4. So then the 3 stays here. I put my 2 binomials with x and x in the front because my variable is x squared. And then I put my -9 plus 5. And then you should check it. I forgot to check the last one, but remember when we check this, we first multiply kind of left to right. So I distribute the 3 just to the first set of parentheses. So I get 3x minus 18. And then I multiply that by x plus 5. Okay. So then I'm going to do 3x times x, which is 3x squared, 3x times 5, which is 15x, -18 times x, which is -18x, and then -18 times 5, which does give me that -135. Okay. And then my middle terms are like terms, so they add to a -3x. And I multiplied wrong, so like this didn't work. It wasn't what I wanted. So kind of, if it doesn't work, then you either need to go back to your factoring or check your work. 3 times 9 is 27. So this gives me -27x. And then -27 times 5 does give me -135. I did that wrong. And so then this gives me -15 or 15, +15 minus 27 does give me a -12x minus 135. Okay, and now I'm correct. So make sure if you don't get the right answer, that you either check your multiplying or something went wrong with your factors. Okay, the last one. Same thing, it's not in the correct form, so I want to check, is there a GCF? The answer is yes. 4 goes into all of these, there's no variable in common, so I have 4. I divide all of these by 4, and I get k squared minus k plus 3. Okay. And now I identify my B, I identify my C. Okay. We figure out what multiplies to C, which is 3, and adds to B, which is -1. Okay, so I need 3. It's a positive, so I either need a negative times a negative or a positive times a positive. So if I do -3 times -1, which adds to -4, so that doesn't work. And then the only other thing that's 3 is 3 times 1, which most of you might realize that that's not going to work either. And those are my only factors. So this part does not factor. Now, this is not prime. This is your answer. Okay, don't write prime because we were able to factor it. We were able to use the GCF. We just can't factor it anymore. Okay. Okay, so that is factoring trinomials.